and welcome to our session. My name is Dr. Amanda Morales, and I am here with Mrs. Uma Ganesan. She is my doctoral student, brilliant doctoral student, and I supported her in the development of this paper called Developing Intercultural Competence in Multilingual Science Classrooms, a Narrative Inquiry.
Okay. Good afternoon, all. I'm very thankful to Dr. Morales. Let us start by identifying our research problem. Living in the 21st century means living in a globalizing world where borders continuously shift and dissolve, and cultures merge, and international relations become the basis for a well-functioning tomorrow. We all know that teachers play a crucial role in developing these competencies and dispositions among students in our increasingly globalized multilingual classrooms. So one way to equip our students with linguistic and cultural skills is to understand and communicate successfully with people from a wide range of backgrounds is to foster their development of intercultural competence. That's what we have identified the research problem. And science education for diverse learners in 21st century, the educational reformers in the United States have always strived to solve the problem of how to best teach science for optimum learning for all students. And if you would have known already, the US students' science and math literacy scores on international comparative assessments show very little evidence of progress towards this goal. And our BIBE, Richard Bybee, emphasizes that in STEM programs, student investigations and projects present the time and opportunity for teachers to help students develop 21st century skills, such as adaptability, complex communication skills, the ability to solve non-routine problems, self-management, self-development, and systems thinking. Next slide, please.
And the importance of STEM education for all learners has never been more pronounced. It provides more job opportunities. The number of unfilled STEM vacancies are higher than the number of qualified candidates available for those positions. It provides upward economic mobility. The average salaries of STEM jobs are 70% more than the national average. And it also is an opportunity to develop skills. As Uma discussed, the US Bureau of Statistics says that in the next 20 years, 80% of jobs will require those technical skills. So this paper is framed within the literature in a few different camps, and there are three areas that I want to bring your attention to before we dive into the research study and the findings. The first one is the urgent need for instructional strategies that improve science literacy among all students. The area of the literature that talks about the benefits of integrating native languages into instruction of science content is also addressed. And thirdly, teaching strategies for building science knowledge and intercultural competence among all students, but in particular among multilingual students. And I would say that this third piece is one of the main hallmarks of this paper and most important aspects that the paper brings to light.
Okay, let's begin with the significance of our study. Some of the most widely used teaching models for effective instruction, such as the Bybee's 5E model, utilize Vygotsky's sociocultural theory of cognitive development and human learning as a foundation. And despite the fact that student populations continue to increase in cultural and linguistic diversity, these models do not attend to the role that ethno-racial linguistic diversity plays in shaping the social ecology of classrooms or the ramifications of not attending to its salience. Next slide, please. The need for fostering discourse and building intercultural competence among students is a common blind spot in teacher praxis. So this can inhibit efforts to cultivate safe and supportive STEM learning environments for all students and can ultimately threaten multilingual student success. As a part of larger study, this study inquires or explores the phenomenon of intercultural competence development through the lived experiences of a Midwestern high school science teacher.
So the research questions guiding this study, the central question is, what instructional strategies can foster, shape, and facilitate development of intercultural competence of multilingual students in ethno-racially diverse science classrooms? And the sub-questions were, in what ways does linguistic responsiveness aid in teaching science to multilingual students? What are the benefits of integrating science content and language instruction while teaching multilingual students? And what different strategies can science teachers employ to develop intercultural competence among their multilingual students? And guiding our study with these research questions in mind, it's important to note the ontological and epistemological stance that we've taken in this paper. And our stance is that reality is ever emergent, it's fluid, and knowledge is socially constructed and co-created between communicators. Hence the importance and salience of focusing on intercultural communicative competence within science classrooms. And Uma will talk a bit more about the theoretical frameworks, but the main one that guided the design of both data collection and analysis is the Clandon and Connolly's model for narrative inquiry, as well as Michael Byram's multidimensional model of intercultural competence. For the narrative inquiry model, there are 3 dimensions to narrative inquiry: the temporal dimension, the spatial dimension, and the social personal dimension.
Thank you, Dr. Morales. Now I will be talking about Byram's multi-dimensional model of intercultural competence. Here you can see a small flowchart, Michael Byram proposed a famous 5-factor model of intercultural competence, as you can see in the chart here. According to Byram, Rybkova, and Starkey, intercultural competence consists of 3 components: knowledge, skills, and attitudes, and is supplemented by 5 values, which are skills of interpreting and relating, attitudes, curiosity and openness, critical cultural awareness, knowledge, and skills of discovery and interaction. These 5 values are strongly interrelated. Byram argues that the basis of intercultural competence is in the attitudes of the person interacting with people of another culture. Without this basic competence, the other 4 cannot truly develop. And the traditional narrative inquiry, we are very inspired by Kim. So we pulled out a quote from her. Traditional narrative inquiry is described as a storytelling methodology that inquires into narratives and stories of people's life experience. So that's what we utilized our study, the methodology of the study, narrative inquiry.
And for our sample, we engaged in purposeful sampling and criterion sampling. And as I said, this paper is one piece of a larger study, but this paper focuses on one participant. That research participant is Christina Smith. She is a high school physical science and biology teacher at Parkway High School. She teaches 9th and 10th grades, and she has 11 years of teaching experience.
Yeah, now we will go to the research methods. The data collected, we collected 11 individual in-depth semi-structured interviews, about 45 minutes each, over an 8-month period. And the field notes and artifacts were collected as secondary data. And for data analysis, we involved open and thematic coding, which is in vivo, and we synthesized stories of experience around the coalescing themes. And the frameworks which we use, as Dr. Morales already pointed out, it is Byram's multi-dimensional model of intercultural competence and 3D narrative inquiry framework of Clandon and Connolly. And these are some examples of our artifacts, like Christina's lab and classroom. Next slide, please.
And the challenges that we would like to talk about from the findings, Christina indicated that she had a tough time teaching science to all students early in her career because at her high school, they had a large population of native Spanish speaking students, which is an indication of location of learning. She learned that when ELL students are struggling to form simple sentences, that they often have many more difficulties learning complicated scientific terminologies without scaffolded support. And that's an example of linguistic competence. And as we analyzed her narratives, we found that Christina has since continued to use scaffolding and breaking down of difficult scientific vocabulary in her instruction. This served as evidence of her linguistic responsiveness in teaching science, and it's one way that she modeled intercultural competence with and for her students.
And this is an example of biology Latin roots vocabulary worksheet, where you can see that the word is being split into different components like a prefix and a suffix. So that's what she used to help her ELL students.
And so also among the findings, she shared a broad range of strategies that she utilizes. And we've provided here the in vivo codes, such as molecule dancing, acting out, use of movement, cooperative learning, collaboration, working with partners and groups. And all of these factors, all of these codes are representative and connected to existing research such as that done by Catalano and Leonard. The use of dance to foster intercultural communication, and McGinnis's work on the role of inquiry projects such as rap skits, multimodal, multilingual elements incorporated into the work, as well as Vygotsky's sociocultural constructivist learning theory is also represented in these codes. As two additional codes that were found related to strategies is culturally responsive education, creating culture walls, having kids share their stories, their life experiences, kids utilizing their native language in the classroom, translanguaging, and the fact that she was totally open to them utilizing multiple languages in the classroom. It connected well to home language and home culture support strategies that are mentioned by Lee and Buxton, the comparison method mentioned by Reed, the language emergence strategies of Hermes, the translanguaging methods mentioned by Leonette, as well as the work of Garcia, and code meshing strategies described by Lee and Hansfield. And a fourth in vivo codes cluster that was identified is pointing at pictures, pointing to words, talking with her hands, use of creative pictures, visual demonstrations, gestures. All of these align with what Jackson talks about around nonverbal communication strategies to help in intercultural communication. The codes such as making it visual and concrete, movement with some sort of imagery, those codes align with what McGinnis talks about around strategies of moving across linguistic, visual, and physical modes to create texts that are assets to our fast-growing global culture.
Thank you so much, Dr. Morales. This is the summary of all the strategies that we have mentioned. The first one is encourage multimodal projects and activities. The second one is facilitate peer, partner, and group work. And the third one is promote code meshing and translanguaging in classrooms. And fourth is employ nonverbal communication during instruction.
And I want to make a note here that Christina shared a myriad of strategies that she utilizes, and Uma in the Lit Review provided a beautiful, comprehensive listing of strategies, and we've provided that in a handout that you can access in the conference files. So implications of this study briefly, teachers with a focus on intercultural competence is really crucial to increasing multilingual students' access to materials, given the mobile and multilingual globalized classrooms that we're in. Teachers should explore ways to foster and facilitate intercultural competence so that students can develop this important skill and become better globalized citizens. When students understand the value of diversity, it enhances tolerance, acceptance, inclusion. It encourages the search for new information and perspectives. It improves decision-making and problem-solving skills, and it leads to innovation and discovery. As the demographics of the United States continue to diversify, And as there is a growing need for a larger scientifically trained workforce, developing intercultural competence among all students is really key to creating a more diverse and inclusive STEM workforce and in providing pathways towards economic advancement and social contribution of youth from historically marginalized communities.
And for the second set of implications, developing intercultural competence involves systemically observing and critically reflecting on our own, our students and our families' identities and the ways of knowing. And I believe, and we believe, narrative studies such as this one can prove quite beneficial for the field of educational research, as they provide insights that might help educators, educational leaders, policymakers, and researchers to better understand methods to improve science outcomes of multilingual learners. So as an extension of this research could look into interactions between teachers and their co-workers, parents, school administration, the wider community to develop intercultural competence. This could lead to better support systems for science teachers that mitigate teacher burnout related to complex and high pressure environments they are navigating in both rural and urban settings. And finally, to conclude, in light of rapidly changing demographics of the US student population, urgent need for improving science achievement for all students, high-stake assessment and accountability policies, and underrepresentation of this topic, more research on the science teacher's experience in multilingual classroom is definitely warranted. And this topic is a fertile area for future research. Future research on this topic could provide many more strategies and concrete ways for teachers to foster intercultural competence of students. And multilingual learners represent a tremendous asset for the US if their full potential can be unlocked and harnessed.
Thank you so much. We welcome questions. These are our emails here. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, all of you. We have provided also the references here. Thank you so much.